the workings of this. But it reminded me of a story. So I had to put it out to you and see what it evokes in us. And it's a story of a certain woodchopper. He was a very honest man, and he made barely a subsistence living by gathering wood out in the forest. But this woodchopper had the unfortunate affliction of having a great hairy wen on the side of his face. This was an affliction, of course. But one day our woodchopper was out gathering wood, but it was very sparse, so he had to go deeper into the forest to gather. And so the day got longer. And as the dusk was coming down, he realized that he wasn't going to make it home in time to before dark. But, he was afraid because he knew that there were wild animals out in that forest, and he didn't want to be encountering any of these beasts through the night. So he decided to climb a tree. So he climbed a tree and he nestled himself in a branch to rest for the night. But as the night wore on and the moon came up, all of a sudden he heard sounds. It was the sounds of trumpets and gongs and flutes and all kinds and all manner of instruments. And then, to his very great surprise, as he was sitting there in the moonlight, he saw masses of different kinds of beings. There were goblins and fairies and devs and gremlins and all manner of elementals. It seems that it was some kind of festival time. They all had their instruments, they had their flagons, they had honey, wine, nectar and toddy and all kinds of manners of celebratory fluids. So they were having a great party around his tree. And, he was kind of afraid, but he was kind of drawn by the sounds too, so he was kind of jiggling a little bit up in his branches. And then it so happened that one amongst this array of different kinds of spirits and creatures and beings sniffed the air and said, "I smell human." And just at that moment, the woodchopper's branch snapped and he fell to the ground. Well, being very quick thinking, he spoke to the throng at large and he said, "Oh, greetings and salutations, all of you honorable beings." Well, they said, "Well, just as well you greeted us in this manner, otherwise we would have torn you to pieces and eaten you." So they said, "Oh, well, since you've been so gracious to us, join us in our dance," and the music started up again. Well, the flutes and the pipes and the bagpipes and all manner of instruments and the flagon was passed around, and the woodchopper got right into it. He was booging along with all of it. In fact, he came the center of the circle at one stage. They all gathered around him while they watched him in his garden. He was totally taken up with all that was going on there. Well, the night progressed and the first rays of the sun were coming up, and so the whole throng of these beings and creatures and elementals and spirits, and they said, "Well, we have to go now, but will you come and join us again? Here, look, here, take this wealth, we have lots." So they gave him bags of gold, and they said, well, we'd like you to come back. What will you leave with us so that we'll be assured that you'll come back and join us again? Well, Woodchopper said, "Why don't you take my wen?" "Ah, what a good idea." So they took his wen, that hairy thing protruding from his neck. So he went back to his house with his wealth that he had, and he told his family about what had happened, and they were just delighted and celebrated with this now handsome man missing his unsightly protrusion on his neck. Well, this woodchopper happened to have a brother who also had a wen, nice big hairy wen on his face, but he was a kind of a greedy fellow. You know, he had some wealth that he didn't share with his brother. He didn't care about it. But of course, he came to hear about the newfound wealth of his brother and the fact that he was now this handsome, unwenned being. So he went off to his brother to ask what had happened. So his brother told him the story, how he'd got in the forest, got in the tree, and met all the demons and the elementals and so forth. So the brother decided, well, if he can do it, I can do it too. So come the next full moon time, he went off deep into the forest where his brother had dictated, and climbed the tree and waited, and sure enough, the throng came, and a very similar thing happened. But of course this time the branch didn't break. At a certain moment the wind brother jumped down from the tree, and the group gathered around him, and he said, "I want to join you in your dance." Oh, well, they allowed him to do that. But you know, his mind was on the reward that he was going to get after it. So his dancing wasn't, he just didn't get into it. You know how it is. He didn't get into it. He didn't have the rhythm, the presence, and so forth. And of course, all of these beings, they realized this, and they were not impressed at all. But you know, they tolerated his presence, and as the dawn was coming up, in fact, the brother with the wind said, "Oh, well, I guess you'll have to leave now. Will you give me my present?" And they said, "Well, yes, we'll give you a present. We don't want you to come back amidst us again. Take this." So they gave him his brother's wen. So with this story, what does it evoke in us as a realization in these times where those of us with sensitivities at varying levels recognize that there are abroad those elements. The gods have been evoked, whether you call it in anger, but they've been called out, and they're calling out all of the panoply of those that have come after. Because these mountain gods for us have a story. And maybe that story will be told at some other time. Some of us know parts of that story. But they're powerful forces because they are the basic elements of life. Because from our experience, there are 7 gods in that mountain at Mount Kinabalu. And those gods are representations of the basic elements of life. So this mountain has within it all the minerals, the basic elements of life, represented each by a different god, so to speak. When you call out, when we can understand that, when we can see what's going on in our world, these forces have been called forth. We're experiencing them each in our own way. But what does this story have to do with it? What does this story evoke in us as a realization? when we have all of these swirling elements coming forth, presenting themselves. What is it that's evoked in us? What would you recognize?
It's honouring what is going on, giving gratitude, because the ultimate thing is it's the dance of life, it's the dance of change.
Absolutely.
And when we have a negative thought about it, it adds to a negative and a masculine.
No, we presuppose we're going to have some better time, an age of enlightenment, whatever it is, an expectation of how it should be. It's to do the dance, isn't it? To be lost in the dance. Would you agree? Absolutely. Dance with all of these, in whatever form they take. They are. It's a great dance.